Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Farron McEntee, and I am so delighted to have you all with us for today's panel on higher education in neuroscience and society. I am here with our wonderful panelists representing the Dana Foundation Career Network in Neuroscience and Society. So I'll begin by introducing our panelists. So as our moderator, we have Dr. Kara Ramos with the Dana Foundation, or Dr. Kenneth Kishida with Wake Forest University, excuse me, Dr. Kyle France with Georgia State University, and Dr. Mark Lewandowski with Grinnell College. And so now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Dr. Ramos. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Farron, and thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. And thank you to Farron and Francis Shen for organizing this panel discussion. So I'm Kara Ramos, as Farron said. I'm Vice President for Neuroscience and Society at the Dana Foundation, and I'm excited to be joined by our terrific panelists today to discuss their experience implementing neuroscience and society in their work and institutions. And our hope is that this webinar will provide an overview of models for others who are curious about neuroscience and society. So before we get started, I'm just going to say a little bit about the Dana Foundation and our work to orient people. And I have just a few slides prepared. Let me see if I can get those shared. Okay, can you see that? Yeah, okay. 1 second. All right. So just a little bit about Dana, as I mentioned. We are a privately endowed grant-making philanthropy based in New York City. This is the team, and our mission is to advance neuroscience that benefits society and reflects the aspirations of all people. We think of neuroscience and society as a paradigm that centers humans, centers society, and really is trying to connect brain research to real world needs, values, and experiences by bringing together students, scientists, practitioners, and community members to share expertise, reflect on their different perspectives, and ensure that neuroscience serves people in meaningful and socially responsible ways. So we have a set of values that guide our work and our decision making, and you can read more about those on our website. Just briefly about our grant making. So we organize our grant making into 3 program areas focused around education, next generation training, which is really the topic for today, and public engagement on neuroscience and society issues. And you can read all about this at our website, but I do want to just share briefly an example of a grant we've funded in each of these program areas, just to give you a sense of what we support. So in our education portfolio, which is trying to really interest people in the brain and educate people about how neuroscience is connected with everyday life, we gave a grant to the School for Science and Math at Vanderbilt, which is a partnership between Vanderbilt and the Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools. And this is a really cool project where they're going to basically empower high school students to contribute to neuroscience and education policy by designing, implementing, and analyzing a cogneuro experiment, examining smartphone use in the classroom, and then they're going to present their findings to school district leaders, really trying to build the students' confidence and capacity to answer questions about how the brain is affected by smartphone use and connect that to policy that affects their lives as high school students. Another example coming from our Next Gen program, and as I mentioned, this is really the space we're in today. So this is a project that is called NeuroEngage, and this is a multifaceted initiative aimed at equipping neuroscience trainees and early career scholars with critical skills in science communication, outreach, and advocacy. And this is anchored in the really pressing issue at the moment around this growing disconnect between science and society, and the, I think, really associated diminishing public trust in institutions. So this is focused on empowering students and those early career faculty to connect with public audiences around neuroscience topics. And co-PI of this project is actually Kyle, who's on the webinar today. So maybe she'll talk a little bit about that. Lastly, this is a grant that is in our Frontiers program, which is focused on public engagement. And this is to support a multi-state, really, it's kind of a cross-country roadshow, multidisciplinary engagement program designed to reshape public understanding of frontotemporal dementia, or FTD. And it's anchored around this award-winning play, which I hope to see later this year, called Unraveled. And this tells the true story of scientist turned artist Anne Adams and her FTD diagnosis. So, this project's a collaboration between the creative team behind the play and the Global Brain Health Institute and the UCSF Memory and Aging Center that aims to amplify community voices, build trust, and foster inclusive partnerships across neuroscience, caregiving, and the arts. We were excited about this project because FTD actually disproportionately affects young people, people under the age of 60, not necessarily a group you think of when you think of dementia. And so they're typically or frequently excluded from traditional dementia advocacy and support. Those are just kind of quick examples of the things that we fund across our programs. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is our flagship programmatic effort, which is called the Dana Center Initiative for Neuroscience and Society. We started this in April of 2024, and this really captures our vision for neuroscience and society sort of writ large. This is a nearly $20 million initiative that brings together academic institutions, neuroscientists, and the communities they serve to co-create the future of neuroscience. This initiative is connecting scholars and the public, as I was mentioning before, to really empower people with this neuroscience information and set them up to exercise, frankly, agency in their lives anchored with neuroscience knowledge. A big part of this is training. So, if we want this neuroscience and society vision to take root, we need to be able to train a new generation of experts who will help shepherd neuroscience for a better world. And that's really what today's webinar is all about. How are we teaching people in universities about neuroscience and society? And we're so fortunate to have three speakers today who are going to share with us how they've been doing that. And I just wanted to end with this final spark of inspiration from Kaf Drasa, who's a professor at Duke and a real expert in psychiatry and neuropsychiatric research. And he's also one of the inaugural recipients of a Neuroscience and Society Champion Award that we started last year. And in this piece in Nature, he wrote, "Science is a human enterprise. It matters who asks the questions, who interprets the results, and who tells the stories." And so it is just such an honor at the foundation to be in a position to fund different approaches to teaching neuroscientists how to do neuroscience in a societally engaged way so that we are generating the next generation of trainees who can really, carry this torch of neuroscience and society forward. So I will stop there and turn off my screen share. And I'm now going to turn it over to our panelists, who are each going to take about 5 minutes to share about their neuroscience and society work before we move into a Q&A. And so we'll do about 15 or 20 minutes of Q&A that I'll lead with the panel, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. So definitely be thinking what you might like to ask as you're hearing from our speakers, and we'll get to that in the end of the hour. So I guess we'll go in alphabetical order, starting with Kyle. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, terrific. Can everyone hear me? Give me a thumbs up. All right, some heads nodding. Thank you very much. All right, it is such an honor to join you today. We at Georgia State University have enjoyed a partnership with the Dana Foundation for many, many years. And in fact, I want to kick off my introduction by sharing with you that for many years we presented a poster at the Brain Awareness Week poster session that was hosted adjacent to the Society for Neuroscience annual meeting each year. And our poster was always called 52 Weeks of Brain Awareness with the Center for Behavioral Neuroscience. And so we wanted to emphasize that it was really important to celebrate Brain Awareness Week with the rest of the world in March each year, but that in the Atlanta area, we really recognize the importance of sharing our enthusiasm for the brain and behavior all year round. So 52 weeks, and we had lots of different programming, and we still do. We engage in a lot of K through 12 and community events, undergraduate and graduate education, postdoctoral support, and faculty advancement in neuroscience, with society always front and center. The Center for Behavioral Neuroscience that I mentioned is currently a university research center at Georgia State University, which is a university centered in downtown Atlanta with 5 additional campuses in the very broad metro Atlanta region. But the Center for Behavioral Neuroscience started as a National Science Foundation funded science and technology center in 1999. And over the 10 years of that funding, we brought in over 100 neuroscientists, faculty, and postdoctoral fellows, many of whom are still in our Metro Atlanta institutions to this day. And we really helped to build a vibrant neuroscience community based on those forward-thinking investigators who were already here. And research was the focus, but education and knowledge transfer were the other 2 prongs of these NSF science and technology centers. And for our center, we interpreted knowledge transfer as community partnerships around neuroscience education. And so we have been able to center our interactions with our communities for many years. We have a popular undergraduate major now that evolved from our emphasis in neuroscience and society. We have robust graduate programming and really strong interdepartmental programming called the Brains and Behavior Program that is funded by the state of Georgia through Georgia State University. And that supports the many facets of neuroscience in 15 different departments, including philosophy as an example, where we get to integrate the ethics of neuroscience and the study of the mind. My job originally was in the Department of Biology, and then I moved to the Neuroscience Institute, which functions like a department at our university when we formed that in 2009. But my job from the start, we called a dual role bench and education scientist position because we wrote into the tenure and promotion manual for my job and another colleague's position an and/or clause that allowed us to emphasize both basic laboratory research, and mine was in addiction mechanisms with a focus on adolescents, and or science education research and administration. So that really brought it elevated the focus on neuroscience and society through faculty positions, allowing us not to push that community partnership into the service element of a faculty role. So that's kind of an innovative approach that Georgia State took years ago. Other aspects of neuroscience and society that we support include examples like community engaged research. So with a Dana Foundation planning grant, we were able to expand our partnership with what's called the Grady Trauma Project. That recruits trauma survivors from the Grady Trauma Center at Grady Hospital near our campus for research that is really led by Emory University investigators and collaborators at Georgia State. And we got to expand our students' ability to be involved in clinical internships and learn through trauma-informed research and community-engaged research endeavors and sharing of data through those programs. And then finally, I'll mention that grant that Dr. Ramos introduced, the Next Gen grant from the Dana Foundation, with my colleague, Dr. Maria Majura, in the lead on that initiative. We have a 3-pronged approach in that grant. Maybe some of that will come up next, and I also later in our conversation. And I also want to mention that Dr. Majura is very interested in the neuro arts and is collaborating with the Woodruff Arts Foundation. That helps to translate some of the funds derived from the success of the Coca-Cola company into our understanding of how the arts can inform neuroscience and society. I'll stop there and just say again, it's a real pleasure to be on this panel with such esteemed colleagues and the Dana Foundation, and I look forward to talking more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That was really great and right on time. I'm going to turn it over to Ken next.
That was great, Kyle. Thank you, Kara, for the introduction and opportunity to talk about what we're doing at Wake Forest University. Neuroscience has been a real strength of our graduate program in the biomedical sciences for decades. I came to the school about 10 years ago to start my lab and get things going looking at human decision-making and mechanisms in that space. Around the same time, actually, just before that, the university started a neuroscience minor. That's been, certainly over about a decade now. It's a very popular minor amongst the students in a university that has a very strong foundation in the liberal arts. Um, that was going very well. They were looking to start a new major, and this was, just really kind of a grassroots interest in growing interest. And in around 2023, the university leadership published its strategic framework, kind of framing the direction of the university, looking forward to the next 100 years. We're coming up on our 100-year anniversary here, or second, excuse me, 100-year anniversary. So what does it look like for the next 100 years? And neurosciences and the strength of that program in combination with the liberal arts, really a neuroscience and society initiative was a big part of that vision. Um, Shortly after that, leaders here in the School of the Arts, but also in the neuroscience program, and others put together a center planning grant and submitted that to the Dana Foundation, was awarded that, which led to an institution-wide visioning process to ask the question, what would neuroscience and society look like at Wake Forest University? And part of that was a new role, a leader in this effort, the Boswell Chair in Neuroscience and Society, which I applied to and was awarded a really wonderful opportunity to be a big part of what's happening now. And part of this role, starting hopefully in July, will be a new center for neuroscience and society. The goal of this center is to really hit all levels of training for the next generation of neuroscientists that will be impacting society. One of the things that really excited me about this role was the chance to interact with, faculty and scholars and students from across the institution, not just the sciences, but like I said, the liberal arts. So there's tremendous interest from faculty from philosophy, the arts, divinity, the law school, the business school, and certainly the School of Medicine. And so Neuroscience and Society and the center that's going to be supporting this effort over the next several years is really kind of founded on three pillars, right? Neuroscience and health with partnerships, not just in the School of Medicine, but also in relevant spaces here on the main campus. Neuro arts, really led by Christina Soriano and Christina Hugerschmidt, who have been running a world-class and leading neuro dance initiative and program, doing research in that space. And then neurohumanities. It's really a growth area for things that we're interested in here. Part of what the center is going to support and champion is a brand new major in neuroscience, which is going to launch in the fall. And when this major was visioned, one of the things they wanted to do, what the school wanted to do, was to not just have just another neuroscience major, right? But to do something that's distinctive and unique to Wake Forest University. And again, going back to the strengths in the liberal arts, having a major which really blends in the kind of humanistic, societal focus and needs into this major that really supports the pro humanitate values that are a part of that are the motto of our university. And so amongst the various unique programs, for instance, one of the major requirements is a neuroscience and humanities course, which I've been designing and teaching this past semester actually for the first time. It's been a lot of fun, but it's really kind of a neurohumanities survey. So neuroscience and economics, neuroscience and arts, neuroscience and philosophy, across the board, neuroscience and law. How does neuroscience touch each of these disciplines, and how do these disciplines touch neuroscience? And one of the things that the center will do is to support learning opportunities and experiential learning opportunities for the undergraduates coming through in this major, but also training for graduate students, postdocs, and faculty to be able to teach and train in these disciplines, right? Creating learning hubs for faculty in the arts or in the law school to come and partner with neuroscientists to co-create new courses, but also co-create new research programs that would support the whole training infrastructure. Like I said, this is hopefully starting up this summer. The major is certainly starting this fall. There's a lot of fun programs and initiatives around that. So I can't really say what's going to happen, right? This is all in the future, but we're really well poised with the tremendous support from the institution in setting up the center and from donors. And so stay on the lookout for things that are coming out of Wake Forest University over the next few years. We're really excited and we're really thankful to be able to talk about what we're doing here today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ken. I feel like part of me was wishing I could go back to school as I was hearing you describe what it's going to be like. It's really
100%.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think this is great already, just thinking about, the point of this webinar, talking about ways that faculty are bringing this NNS paradigm into their work. We're already hearing from you, Ken, about tying the vision of the major to the real ethos of the institution. I think that's really smart. Kyle, you were giving the example of putting it into the scope of your role so that it's not something that this and society piece isn't something that gets relegated to like your free time. It's integral to what the university is expecting you to do. I think that's also a great example. And so last but not least, we can turn it over to Mark for your introductory remarks. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Kara. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon or this evening, wherever you may be, or the middle of the night, maybe for some. I don't know. I saw there's someone from Lesotho here, so that's really great. If you tuned in for this webinar hoping for some advice, my best advice to you is don't follow Kyle and Ken, because then I don't have anything to say after them. Those are really great. Establishing remarks about some really excellent programs across the country. So I'm in a pretty different space, honestly. Grinnell College is just a liberal arts college only. We have about 700 and, sorry, not 700, but 1,750 students. We're in the middle of Iowa, which is in the middle of the country. And we do pretty well as a liberal arts college. There are quite a few, something like 40% of the students here graduate with a major in the sciences. And our program in neuroscience is not even a major. And I shouldn't put it that way, honestly, because we've contemplated here and there across the years that we might make it a major, but we've held fast and kept it a concentration, a program in this respect for a while. So like a minor at a lot of other institutions. And just roughly counting, a major at Grinnell is something like 8 courses out of 32 in a 4-year undergraduate degree. Typically, there are more than just the 8 courses, but on paper, at any rate, the neuroscience concentration is just 6 courses. So we've had this program formally for at least 20 years at this point. It's been very successful. It's been very popular with students, and we, the faculty who run the program, very, very much enjoy it. But the main point, and I think the reason that I was invited to be part of this panel, and I do want to thank Farron and Francis for inviting me, and Kara and Dana Foundation for what I hope is a burgeoning relationship here with Grinnell College. Of those 6 courses, from the outset, we had a course that we referred to as cross-divisional, meaning it was something that was a course that students would take as part of their concentration outside the sciences. So I think I'll hold off for the moment on noting a few of those that have been very popular with students over the years. But honestly, after maybe not even as many as 20 years, but at this 20-year mark, we are considering where we are with our curriculum and envisioning perhaps some changes to it that would strengthen that kind of commitment to the education that our students are receiving as they progress through this at Grinnell. I think it'll be obvious to everybody compared to Georgia State and Wake Forest that we're a very small college, and so we're reaching maybe a more limited number of students. But it's definitely the case that our students that have been through this neuroscience concentration have gone off and done quite a few amazing things in all the directions that you would expect them to do in terms of their career, many of which have included continuing to study in the neuroscience area. So I think I'm going to leave my remarks at that at this point, and then see how, in answering some questions later on, I'll be able to bring out more about what we do here at Grinnell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's really helpful to have different perspectives on this, because I think everyone who's trying to implement this, idea of neuroscience connected to society is at a different place in their journey. And it's really helpful to hear sort of how people are thinking about it at those different stages. All right, so I am going to kick off the Q&A now. And to start, and I would love to hear from each of you, maybe like your elevator pitch answer to this question, which is to say like something pithy and maybe on the shorter side. I'm curious to hear, what does neuroscience and society mean to you? And why do you think that it's important for educators to teach neuroscience in a way that connects it to broader societal impact? I mean, you've all talked about this, but really just to underscore it. And maybe I'll start with you, Ken, since you're unmuted.
Sure. Yeah. So I think what neuroscience and society means to me is probably what neuroscience has always meant to me personally, which is a way to understand the world that we exist in. Right? There's lots of ways of understanding, whether it's through the humanities or the sciences, to understand what is going on in this world that we exist in, right? And how to make choices. And sciences has always been my home base. But then to partner up with folks in the humanities, in the divinity school and the law school, to understand their perspectives on what's going on in society and what neuroscience could either do in those spaces, but also in reciprocation, that kind of relationship really gives a rounded perspective on making meaning and understanding how to navigate the times that we're in the future that we're heading towards.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love the idea that's so foundational in what you're saying, which is this idea of epistemic humility. Like no
Mm.
one discipline has 100% of the answers. And I hear that so strongly in the different, lenses that you're talking about, Ken. Thank you for that. Mark.
Thanks. I didn't know that I was a believer of the liberal arts until I took this job, but it's made all the bit of sense for the 27 years that I've been here. And in that respect, I think that because neuroscience as a science is itself so broad, it touches so many different kinds of other areas, other sort of disciplinary areas, if you will, or just ways of knowing. And I like that phrase because I don't think that scientists use it maybe as often as other fields do, this idea of ways of knowing. And so, a favorite idea for me to underscore this is to think about how there's a two-way street, two-way communication between fields, such as I could be interested in movement neuroscience and think about that from motor control perspectives and so on. But then if I'm talking to a choreographer, that person has this fundamentally different training and ways of thinking about movement that we should have a really excellent conversation about what it is to dance and what the meaning of what the meaning of that kind of thing is. So those kinds of things have just always excited me, and I don't see them as needing to have the borders that we often put on something like saying this is neuroscience or it's not neuroscience.
Yeah, I love that example. Thanks, Mark. Kyle.
When you ask what neuroscience and society mean to me and us at Georgia State, I want to bring up access. One of our major emphases at Georgia State University overall is access. We're a Research One institution with an access mission, a very large, very diverse population of undergraduate or all students, around 54,000 students. And our goal is to make high quality higher education available to students from all different backgrounds. And one thing we do is take what I call an institutional deficit approach to that, looking at what barriers the institution has created, perhaps inadvertently, to student success, and then working to reduce those barriers. And when I think of neuroscience and society, I think similarly, it encompasses the goal of making neuroscience accessible to all people. Understanding your brain and behavior in order to make healthy decisions throughout your lifetime, creating advances in healthcare through basic and applied research, and then making the treatments or the cures or the devices available to all people in ethical ways. Getting ahead of technological advances to consider the impact they might exert on distinct populations in our societies, and ensuring that all people really contribute to the solutions and the access to these innovations. Taking culturally responsive approaches to disseminating what we learn and to build trust in our society. So when we recruit our diverse population of students and other trainees into neuroscience at Georgia State, we democratize the field. It's really their questions and their approaches that are the questions and the answers of the future.
Thank you, Kyle. This is so great. I feel so inspired listening to you all talk, and I think you're really reinforcing what's still kind of a new way that we've been thinking about neuroscience in society as a paradigm. And I really hear that in what you all are saying. Thank you for those reflections. Um, I want to get a little more granular in terms of your experience as faculty. I mean, you work in universities, so would love to hear about your experience teaching students about neuroscience in a more traditional sort of, uh, you might say, reductionist kind of way versus through this more expansive neuroscience and society lens. How do students react? What is your perception of how their experience might differ when they're engaged in that traditional pedagogy versus a more neuroscience and society-based approach? And I'm happy to, hear from each of you in whatever order you would like, whoever would like to jump in.
I'll go first on that one if it's okay. Because in having been prompted with this thought, thank you, Kara, that I feel like I'm lucky that Grinnell students who end up being interested in the neurosciences anyway here, they don't really ever think twice about it. I mean, on occasion we'll still encounter students that want to silo the science part and think about, oh, well, I'm going to take this other course in maybe neurophilosophy or music in the brain or what have you, this a selection of other courses that we offer. But, and they might not immediately see that there should be more like a fluid border between those things, if a border at all. But most of the time, we're just really lucky, and the students are sort of here for it, as the phrase goes. They came to Grinnell because they're liberal arts students, and while they might major in the sciences, at least for our program for neuroscience, they can major in anything, and sometimes they do. I mean, predominantly we have science students that take the concentration, but I so in large part, I'm mostly in a position of speaking language with them that involves talking about the very broad applications of neuroscience on a day-to-day basis, anyway.
Kyle, do you want to go next or?
Oh, I can go. Yeah, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
I would say that relevance is key to any kind of teaching, and especially to teaching neuroscience. I mean, those of us on this call probably think that neuroscience is sort of inherently cool. It's amazing. It's a wonderful field, obviously multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. I wrote down the term epistemic humility. It just really fits. Thank you for introducing me to that word. But that hands-on, sort of minds-on teaching, using the 5 E's learning cycle, where the first E is engage, really hooking students in, is so appropriate for neuroscience and society topics. So when you can use an example that makes science and neuroscience in particular come alive for the individual students, it really kicks off any lesson plan beautifully with that engagement, and then lets the sort of explain, explore, extend, and evaluate components of the 5 E's learning cycle much easier because you've already got engagement in the topic. And we have enabled students to design these 5 E's centered lesson plans over the years in all kinds of neuroscience courses that then they can go teach elsewhere. So that's another great way to enhance relevance, is to have students turn around quickly to teach what they just learned, so that they can bring their own examples to other students, other learners of various ages and stages. Another piece that I would touch on is really a trauma-informed pedagogy, so an approach that helps instructors understand that students come from all different backgrounds and resource spaces, and trauma-informed pedagogy has a new acronym in the word TILT. What is it? Transparency in Learning and Teaching, TILT. And with that approach, you're really meeting students where they are, as I said. One example is giving students different choices of ways that they could complete an assignment. whether they enjoy writing more or creating a video to depict their ideas, or they might choose different topics. So then they can choose a neuroscience and society topic that has high relevance for them. For example, perhaps touching on a disorder or condition that is meaningful to their families, so that they have a greater vested interest. And the scientist spotlight approach has been great in terms of bringing to the fore different scientists who have broken new ground in neuroscience and whatever field you're teaching in. And I would do get into the weeds here. I would give essay questions or multiple choice questions that actually used my own students' last names in the questions as examples. You know, if I'm giving an example of a discovery and then asking for a content-based answer that students could provide in a class. So I think all those things sort of touch on neuroscience and society and elevate the learning experience and make it more fun for everyone.
That's fantastic. Yeah, definitely focusing on what engages the students, right? And so I think like these kind of societal level questions are really what always engage me with neuroscience. Like, where does our mind come from? How do we make choices? These kinds of questions. And so I was trying to debate which example I'd go with, but I think the Neuro and Humanities Survey course that I taught this past semester, I think has been a real eye opener for me. So we led off the course with asking the students, what aspect of neuro and society do you want to learn about, right? And I sent them actually to the NeuroX Careers website. Said, check out these disciplines, come back with one or two that are your favorite topics, and we'll create a curriculum around this and dive right into it. I also queried what their minors were, right? These are all, neuroscience, biology, or psychology majors looking to start the neuroscience major when we start in the fall. But a lot of them had minors in policy, in arts, right? In philosophy, looking at kind of neuroethics type questions. And so they had these other interests that are part of their pre-med or pre-grad school tracks. And I was able to build this into a curriculum where we went into deep, primary literature on systems, neuroscience of the visual system, the auditory system, movement, but then we're able to connect that with, neuroeconomics and decision-making choice. How does the brain represent art, right? Visual art, music, and dance, and wrap this all up in a cinematography, neurocinema module, which kind of brought everything together, including questions about free will and agency and ethical choice. Which I use the Matrix. If anybody knows me and my research, if you go to my website, I love the Matrix. It's a classic. But that wrapped up the whole thing, asking all these kind of big picture questions about how does our brain interact with society. And compared to other interactions where I've taught the same kind of neuroscience reductionist kind of approach, these are the facts of how the brain works. The level of engagement and dialogue and discussion that I had this past semester was just tremendous. And I was really impressed with the essays that were being listed. A lot of reflective writing with a final paper that kind of put all this stuff together. And it's just been a joy to actually grade, which I don't often hear, but just hearing and seeing neuroscience and these other topics integrated in this way has been a real joy. And the students seem to respond quite well to it too.
Yeah, thank you all for those really interesting examples. Um, I feel like there's so many questions that I want to ask you, and we're already kind of running a little low on time. So maybe I will ask about, I definitely want to get to a question that I have about international opportunities because I know we have international folks on the line. Maybe I'll save that one for the last question before we open it up. So my penultimate question, this is tough. I think maybe I'll ask, you can choose how to answer this. What has made it possible for neuroscience and society to grow on your campus? Or, a different way of approaching this would be, what challenges have you had to overcome? And maybe more importantly, what advice would you give to folks on the call who are interested in bringing neuroscience and society to their institutions, keeping in mind that we probably have students and maybe faculty on the line. So who would like to jump on that?
I'll go
Go
real
ahead,
quick.
Ken. Sure.
I think what's made it possible really is almost a kind of grassroots level interest, certainly within the faculty and staff on the university and the School of Medicine, School of Law, but I think also really the students driving it and asking for it, right? So the neuroscience minor existed because students wanted more of that, and the major came to be because the students were really demanding it. And so meeting the students where they're at is something that I think the university Wake has wanted to do and has met that. And so having that support from the faculty has been tremendous. I mean, for me, starting a new position, one of the biggest challenges is just getting around to meet everybody and hear about what everyone's trying to do. But it's been wonderful. I'll let you know what the challenges are in a couple of years when I get past this honeymoon phase of all this exciting things that are happening.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Ken. I appreciate the message about the power that students have. And I will say I've heard this repeatedly. So for any students who are listening or, would watch the recording later, I think it's really important to underscore that students can absolutely push for change at their campuses to meet the interests that they have for their education. Thank you. Kyle, Mark, anything you want to add? Kyle, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just emphasize relationships. So many new endeavors hinge on new relationships and reaching out of one's comfort zone to build communication across disciplines, across departments, and yeah, really be open to different people's approaches to your question or embrace their questions. My dad has a bumper sticker on the wall in his study. The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So keeping that open mind to new challenges that you may face and then helping others face theirs, lifting others in the process of establishing your endeavors is really great. And then I'll just mention money. Funding is critical. It fuels us all in our professions. And so going for those small grants first and letting those build into bigger initiatives and then centers and then university funded departments or programs, that is really the name of the game to change the world. And we all have that opportunity. Just got to go for it.
Thanks, Kyle. It's both structural and relational is what I'm hearing. Mark.
What my colleagues have said already are really great ideas, and I second them. I'll only add that I think that a lot of persistence is needed. If you are in the environment of a reasonably small place like I am, this was Francis, I think, that coined the term that we're looking for a unicorn in trying to hire a person who is both a trained neuroscientist who can teach and work in the area of the science of neuroscience, but that at the same time might do something else in a kind of NeuroX way. And we are working on that, and it has been a challenge. And if those on the call are interested to hear more about that from me, just contact me separately. I'm happy to talk more with you about that. But the persistence is important. That's true of so many important things where you're trying to make change, I'd say, in general, but I'll add it to the list.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That really resonates. All right, let's turn to the international question. So for anybody who might be watching and thinking about international opportunities, and we do have a question about that in our Q&A, do you have any ideas or advice to share for graduate students who are interested in working at the intersection of neuroscience and society, particularly those that emphasize community engagement policy or science communication?
Well, I'll just jump in. I don't know if my answer really can speak to the policy focus or that kind of thing, but again, with relationships, I think networking across the borders is critical and will help us with our global understandings of the impact of neuroscience in society, no matter what sort of specific field you want to explore. And I will say that. In graduate school, especially, as long as you're proactive and getting your other work done, I think a lot of people are open to the idea of taking a semester abroad to garner additional skills that are available in a particular collaborator's vicinity. And with that then comes global awareness of how science is done or how policy is established in other countries. And that really can open our minds to how we might approach things in our own country. And I like to speak to study abroad in particular. I run some study abroad programs with a colleague of mine, Martin Norgard, here at Georgia State University, and we really run a journal club abroad. So it becomes quite feasible for faculty to lead those sorts of experiences at the graduate level, to take students over and learn some of the science that's going on. For example, at the Max Planck Institute in Frankfurt, that was one of our targets. University of Oslo was this past year, where we can really dig in with some individuals doing fascinating work there. And then our students choose an article, present it back to that lab, and get some critique and generate lovely discussion. So it's a nice model for establishing and developing international relationships.
Thanks, Kyle. Ken? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, there's a few levels here at Wake. Certainly as undergrads, there are international study abroad opportunities that are included as part of the program here. Faculty will take groups to London, to Vienna, to Venice. The Wake has houses there where we run classes and collaborate with local institutions to do coursework that meets the demands of the majors, whatever they might be, but also gives us international experience. Graduate school students we're recruiting from around the world, and I would echo what Kyle said. As a graduate student, the first and foremost is to do what you need to do to get that PhD or to get that master's thesis work done, get that core. But we also absolutely support, especially once students advance to candidacy, fellowships and opportunities to do extra training that would augment the neuroscience to do more and humanities and society type work. And then, of course, with the faculty at Wake and the collaboration that we're trying to establish and develop, we are very much an internationally present institution with connections all around the world. Many of our students, whether they be undergrad or graduate, go with professors to go on site to do research in various locations across the board. And so lots of opportunities, lots of interest. So society isn't just an American society, but it's a society writ large across the world or around the world.
I just want to quickly echo the way Ken ended that sentiment. I don't know of specific programs that address neuroscience and society on the international stage, but go do it. I'm this coming year going to launch my fourth international research collaboration. And just doing it, just being able to go and travel and work with scientists internationally, I would argue is a form of practicing neuroscience in society. But there may be more specific programs out there. I can't emphasize enough what a really important idea it is for the existence of science as it is, but also just that for your own personal growth, it's a fabulous opportunity.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all for those examples. I saw we had a question about neuroarchitecture, which I see, Kyle, you answered live. I just wanted to check if Ken or Mark had anything else you wanted to say about the intersection of neuroscience and the built environment, given, as the questioner notes, that we spend so much of our time indoors, and how insights from neuroscience can inform the design of the spaces that we spend our time in.
I mean, just that's such an important question, and definitely a space that needs to be developed. So we, are looking at, say, neuroarts and neuroaesthetics, and the neuroscience of decision making, right? And so that's absolutely at least tangential to the neuroarchitecture question. But there's a neuroarchitecture group that's present at Society for Neuroscience every year, and I had the fortune of meeting some of them this past year. I just didn't know that was a space that existed, but it's a really thriving and interesting space and a really, really important one. So I'll just tribute for it.
Wonderful. Yeah. I was going to say it's probably on the NeuroX website too, I would imagine,
Mhm.
since it's such an interesting and important area as you're all noting. So thank you for that question. We have a question that is well aligned with one of the questions I wanted to ask also. So we'll definitely go to that one, which is what's next for neuroscience and society at your institution? I'd love to hear from each of you, whatever order you would like.
I'll go first and try to. Ooh, I guess I beat Ken. Sorry. Just to keep it quick. We're in the process of still trying to hire in a tenure track line that will be an expansion for our program. I say still trying because we have been in this mode for a little while. That's a different story. But we've done this program evaluation in the last few years where we're really thinking hard about our curriculum. And I think I mentioned before that I think that the spirit here is that we want to strengthen our connections in this realm, neuroscience and society, whatever our new colleague might bring with them. We want to just make that a stronger emphasis for students.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Ken.
Yeah, I'd say, I mentioned earlier the start of our Center for Neuroscience and Society and the training opportunities that we're looking to build there from the ground up, right? Whether you're pre-med, pre-PhD, or pre-JD, non-neuroscience, non-med, biomedical, across the board, we're looking to build there. So immediately, I think we have teaching postdoc positions posted to teach some of these Neuro X courses that are electives that are required for the major, but creating these kind of next generation of faculty and leaders in this space is a big part of what we hope to be seeing here. Um,
Kyle.
I will emphasize one branch of our new Neuro Engage initiative funded by the Dana Foundation, which is our advocacy emphasis, really enabling our scientists of all different backgrounds, but neuroscience in particular, to enhance their confidence, their self-efficacy, and their awareness and skill sets for engaging with their communities, attending their town hall meetings, visiting their sort of policy and planning meetings for their communities to promote neuroscience related concepts where they're relevant and overall encourage analytical thinking, critical thinking in our societal communities. So that's one thing that we are diving into with a very heavy sort of awareness of its importance today. And another thing I want to mention in case we don't have a chance to do it, I hope someone can, and that is collaborate with an initiative called Hip Hop Public Health. And that is coming out of Columbia University. They have fabulous curriculum around cardiovascular health, warnings of high salt diets, but they have yet to explore mental health or mental wellness in their curricula. And so I think that's a space for us to inhabit, capitalizing on their neat approach. And then finally, I'll mention it might be a bit premature, but we are looking at a NeuroX master's degree program where a 2-year master's would have year one in basic neuroscience with us in the Neuroscience Institute at Georgia State University, then year two in a different department or unit at our institution. Chemistry is an easy one for a neurochemistry master's degree, particularly preparing students well for the pharmaceutical industry. Neuro law is another, and neuroeducation, I just mentioned in answer to another question in the chat. Those are all on the table for that NeuroX master's degree that we are interested in pursuing.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. I think the person asked the question in the chat, what I would say to this as well. So just to offer from the funder's perspective, I think that I would love to see the idea of neuroscience and society more broadly sort of taken up in the field of neuroscience. I think it's definitely catching on, it seems. And so would love for as many people who believe in the paradigm to sort of be ambassadors for it. As we've been discussing, right? If you're a student, you can absolutely talk to your faculty, talk to your administrators about, having those learning opportunities on your campus. I think also I would love to see funders of neuroscience be open to devoting some of their funding to neuroscience in society. So sort of broadening their view on, what is within the scope of and what it means to be a funder of neuroscience. I really believe that that ought to, by definition, include this broader view of neuroscience in society as we've been discussing. And I think maybe the even longer term vision that I have would be for this to not be just a neuroscience thing, but a science thing more broadly, right? Like, there's no reason that we shouldn't think about all science in this way, because I think that science is so integral to, how we live our lives as individuals in relationship with each other, how we solve problems that we have in our communities. And so I really, really hope that that's where we go. And I am actually optimistic that that is sort of inevitably what's going to happen. I think we're already seeing so many examples of that. And as we've heard from this panel, neuroscience and society work has been underway for a long time already, even though it hasn't necessarily had that name. So I don't think we have any other unanswered questions, and we are at the end of the hour, so I think we can end here. Thanks everyone again for being here. Thank you to our panelists for taking the time, and thank you to the Career Network for organizing this. I hope it was useful, and definitely go and be the change you want to see in the world. That was such a wonderful piece of inspiration from this afternoon.